Joining me now to discuss this, Sky News political contributor Chris Uhlmann. Chris, I'll get to the young people and this social media war, but let's start with the trusts. I made the point that Bill Shorten, when Labor last looked at trusts and CGT, he exempted these testamentary trusts related to people's wills and estates, not now. And I think the problem here is they've rushed this. I genuinely don't think they understand what they did. I don't think they thought it through. And they've punished one type of trust. They've let the other one go through unscathed. And now I think this is really biting. And I think the most vulnerable people, and we're talking about the parents of disabled children and others, or particularly young children, they've gone down the path of a discretionary trust for a reason. But I think Labor hears the word trust around the cabinet table. They think everyone's rich, and it's a soak the rich sort of budget.
Yeah, Peter, well, in this instance, the politics for them is worse than the policy, and the policy is pretty bad. They've actually attacked the plumbing of the system. Well, they're trying to say that this is an exotic vehicle that really rich people use to try and avoid taxation. Well, when you start to investigate it, you find that there's a very different story. And the worst thing that they've done in terms of the politics, they've introduced complete uncertainty in the future. And how did they do that? Well, they lied about what they were going to do. Now, any single question that's asked of them that they deny, nobody will believe, or at least that's the opportunity that's been opened up for the coalition here. So if the coalition says they're going to introduce death duties, not just through some exotic trust system, but death duties on everything, and then you'll replumb the intergenerational equity argument when young people think that they might be cut out of their inheritance by the fact that the government will be getting in on the act. Now, they can deny that until they're blue in the face, and they may well be telling the truth when they say that. The problem is nobody knows. And so that's the real issue that they've opened up in this budget.
Australia wants 82% of its electricity from renewable sources by 2030. That is the target. That is the plan. That is also roughly 4 years away. And here is where it gets genuinely interesting, because right now, renewables are sitting at about 43% of the grid, which means the country needs to essentially double its renewable generation in the time it takes a child to finish primary school. No pressure. Welcome to Federal Analysis. Let's get into it. Based on 2025 data, Australia is currently generating 43% of its power from renewable sources. While that is an improvement on the 30 to 35% reported in 2023, on the current trajectory the government's program will not be able to meet its target of 82% renewable energy by 2030. That gap is exactly what critics like Sky News contributor Chris Uhlmann have been pointing to when questioning whether the rollout is on track. So what is actually causing the slowdown? Because this is not simply a matter of political will. The obstacles are structural, and they are well documented. Planning approval processes for large-scale renewable energy projects in New South Wales are significantly slower and more expensive than in other Australian states, taking 2 to 3 times longer, 4 to 7 years, and costing 25 times more for developers compared to Queensland. That is not a typo. 25 times more expensive just to apply. A typical large wind project in New South Wales costs more than $4 million simply to apply for approval to build, before a single turbine goes up. The coalition, under Liberal leader Angus Taylor and Nationals leader Matt Canavan, has been consistently critical of the pace and planning of the transition. Canavan in particular has argued Australia should lean more heavily on its domestic oil and gas resources to ensure energy security, especially given the current global supply pressures. The government's position is that progress is real and accelerating. The Albanese government approved 54 renewable energy projects by the 30th of November 2025, bringing total approvals to 123 since 2022, and close to 7 gigawatts of renewable capacity was added to the grid in 2025, sufficient to power approximately 2.4 million homes. Those are not trivial numbers. But the 82% target by 2030 remains an enormous task, and the gap between ambition and delivery is where the genuine debate lives. Whether the rollout is a work in progress or a plan under serious strain depends very much on which set of figures you look at, and who you ask. That is the real story here on Federal Analysis. Subscribe for more sharp daily breakdowns of Australian politics, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one.